The neural translation algorithm was having what Zara Okafor charitably called a complete existential breakdown. For the third time in 10 minutes, the quantum processors overheated trying to parse the incoming transmission from Altair 7, and honestly, she couldn't blame them. After 2 decades of xenolinguistics, she'd never seen a distress signal quite like this one. "Commander Cross, you need to see this," she called across the observation deck of Kepler Station. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, but she kept sipping it anyway. Caffeine was humanity's gift to the universe, even when it tasted like recycled air filters. Riley Cross floated over in the low G section, his movements precise as always. Everything about the man screamed military efficiency, from his regulation haircut to the way he treated conversations like tactical briefings. "What's the status on the Altair transmission?" "Well, the good news is we're definitely dealing with an intelligent species. The bad news is they're either completely insane, or we're about to rewrite every first contact protocol in the book." Zara pulled up the holographic display, watching the alien symbols shift and pulse in real time. The neural net keeps translating the same phrase over and over, "Send your Deathworlders." Cross raised an eyebrow. "Come again?" "That's what I said. But here's where it gets weird." She gestured to the scrolling data stream. "They're not asking for weapons, soldiers, or military aid. They're begging us to send our Deathworlders to save them from something they call the happiness plague." The commander stared at the display for a long moment. In the reflected light of the hologram, his face looked like he was solving a particularly complex equation. "Happiness plague. That's a new one. Right? I ran it through every cultural context filter we have. Same result. They're terrified of being too happy." Zara laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I've analyzed 14 different alien languages, and this is the first time I've encountered a species that considers joy a threat." The translation matrix chimed, indicating a real-time communication link had been established. The voice that emerged from the speakers was melodic, almost sing-song, but underneath the alien harmonics was something that made Zara's skin crawl. Pure, unadulterated terror. "Greetings, violent ones of Earth," the voice began, and Zara had to adjust the emotional resonance filters to compensate for what the system registered as extreme psychological distress masked by chemical euphoria. "We are the Serenity Collective of Altair 7. We send this message in secret, while the joy sickness sleeps in our minds." Cross leaned forward. "Joy sickness? Your species is known throughout this sector as Deathworlders," the alien continued. "Your planet breeds creatures capable of thriving in environments that would destroy peaceful beings. You embrace pain, anger, fear. You are the only ones who might survive what has happened to us." Zara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. "They're calling us Deathworlders like it's a good thing." The transmission crackled with what sounded like suppressed sobs, if aliens could sob. 37 rotations ago, our research collective discovered microscopic spores in the ruins of an ancient facility. We thought they were harmless biological artifacts. We were wrong. The spores, they changed us. They made us happy. "That doesn't sound like a problem," Cross muttered. "Oh, but it is, violent one. It is the worst fate imaginable. We cannot feel anger at injustice. We cannot grieve our losses. We cannot fear genuine threats. Our infrastructure crumbles while we smile. Our children go hungry while we compose poetry about the beauty of starvation. We are dying of bliss, and we cannot stop ourselves from finding it wonderful." Zara's hands were shaking. She'd studied enough xenopsychology to understand the implications. A species that couldn't experience negative emotions would be evolutionarily doomed. Fear kept you alive. Anger motivated change. Sadness helped you process loss and move forward. Without them. "We have observed your species from afar," the alien voice continued, now barely a whisper. "You wage wars, you mourn your dead, you rage against unfairness. These traits mark you as primitive to other galactic civilizations, but to us, they represent salvation. You are immune to false contentment. You can feel the full spectrum of existence, even its darkest corners. The commander looked at Zara. They want us to come fix their happiness problem. More than that, she said, studying the psychological profile data streaming across her screens. They want us to teach them how to be miserable again. They think suffering is the key to survival. The transmission flickered, and when the alien voice returned, it carried a note of desperate urgency. We cannot make this choice ourselves. The spores prevent us from choosing unhappiness, even to save our species. But you, Deathworlders, you who embrace darkness as readily as light, you could choose for us. You could save us from salvation itself. Zara stared at the data flowing across her screen. Neural pathway analysis showed the aliens' brain chemistry had been fundamentally altered. The spores hadn't just made them happy, they'd made them incapable of any emotion that might threaten that happiness. It was chemical lobotomy disguised as paradise. There's something else, she said quietly. The transmission's source location keeps shifting. They're not broadcasting from a single point. Cross frowned. Mobile transmitter? No. Multiple transmitters. Thousands of them, scattered across their entire system. They're broadcasting in secret, probably during whatever passes for their sleep cycle. The spores must have some kind of dormancy period. The implications hit them both at the same time. An entire civilization, reduced to whispering desperate messages in the dark, begging strangers to come take away their joy. It was like something out of a fever dream, except the neural nets didn't lie. This was real. Commander, Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper, what if they're right? What if being a Deathworld species isn't a disadvantage? What if it's exactly what makes us qualified to help? The alien voice faded to static, leaving them alone with the weight of an impossible decision. Somewhere in the Altair system, an entire species was trapped in chemically induced bliss, slowly dying with smiles on their faces. And they were asking humanity, the galaxy's favorite barbarians, to save them from happiness itself. The emergency council meeting felt like a trial, except nobody knew who was on trial or what the charges were. Zara sat across from a holographic array of Earth's finest minds, all looking like they'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. The weight of first contact protocol hung over the room like a storm cloud. Let me get this straight, said Admiral Torres, her voice cutting through the diplomatic chatter. An alien species wants us to fly across the galaxy to make them sad again. That's oversimplifying it, Zara replied, pulling up the neurochemical analysis on the main display. The spores didn't just alter their emotional range. They created a feedback loop that prevents any negative stimulus from registering as a threat. Their cities are literally falling apart because nobody can feel concerned enough to fix infrastructure. They're functionally lobotomized by their own contentment. Dr. Patel, the mission's xenobiologist, leaned forward. But how do we know this isn't some elaborate trap? Maybe they're lying about the happiness plague. Cross shook his head. I've run tactical assessments on every scenario. Their technology is decades ahead of ours in some areas, but they're broadcasting from dying orbital platforms. Their energy signatures are failing across the board. Whatever's happening to them, it's real. The question isn't whether we can help them, said Zara, her voice tight with frustration. It's whether we should. Because helping them means fundamentally changing who they are as a species. We'd be committing cultural genocide in the name of rescue. The room fell silent. In the holographic display, brain scans from the Serenity Collective showed neural pathways lit up in permanent patterns of contentment. It was beautiful, in a horrifying way. Like watching someone smile while they bled to death. There's something else, Zara continued. Our preliminary scans suggest the spores are spreading. Not just on their homeworld, but throughout their entire system. If this thing gets out, if it jumps to other species. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood the implications. Admiral Torres grimaced. A happiness plague that could infect the entire galaxy. And we're the only species immune because we're too psychologically damaged to fall for it. That's one way to put it, Cross said dryly. Though I prefer to think of it as evolutionary resilience. The debate continued for hours, but Zara found herself thinking about something the alien had said. You are the only ones who might survive what has happened to us. Not cure it. Survive it. As if exposure to the spores was inevitable. I need to run additional analysis on the transmission, she announced, standing abruptly. There's something we're missing. Back in her lab, Zara dove into the quantum substrate of the alien message. Neural translation was part art, part science, and part educated guessing. But this time, she focused on what wasn't being said. The gaps between words, the emotional undertones, the things that got lost in translation. What she found made her blood run cold. Hidden in the harmonic frequencies of the alien's voice was another message, one that only emerged when she filtered out the conscious communication. The spores weren't just making them happy. They were using the alien's own neural networks to broadcast. Every transmission was simultaneously a cry for help and an infection vector. The happiness plague was trying to spread itself through their distress signal. Commander, she called, her voice tight with urgency. We have a problem. The spores are actively trying to reach us. Every time we analyze their transmissions, we're exposing ourselves to potential infection. Cross appeared in her doorway within minutes, followed by the station's medical officer. What's our exposure level? Unknown. But I think I know why we're immune. Zara pulled up a comparative analysis of human and alien neural architecture. It's not just that we can feel negative emotions. It's that we've evolved to be suspicious of things that feel too good to be true. Our ancestors who trusted every beautiful flower or friendly predator didn't survive to reproduce. We're paranoid by design. The medical officer ran a scanner over Zara's neural patterns. No signs of infection, but we should implement quarantine protocols immediately. Too late for that, Cross said grimly. The transmission reached 17 different colonies before we isolated it. If the spores can propagate through quantum communication channels, half the galaxy might already be exposed. Zara stared at the data streaming across her screens. Somewhere in the depths of the analysis, she could see the elegant horror of what the spores had accomplished. They'd created a species so content that they couldn't recognize their own extinction. And now they were using that same species to spread across the galaxy, one rescue attempt at a time. We have to go, she said quietly. Not to save them, but to stop this thing before it spreads any further. Even if it means wiping out an entire civilization. They're already wiped out. The Serenity Collective died the moment they chose happiness over survival. What's left is just an echo wearing their faces. The weight of the decision settled over them like a shroud. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence, and their only choice was to play the role of cosmic executioner. The galaxy had called them Deathworlders, and now they understood why. Not because they were violent, but because they were the only ones willing to choose necessary suffering over beautiful lies. As Zara began preparing for the mission to Altair 7, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was exactly what the spores wanted. Earth's Deathworlders, coming to investigate the happiness plague, carrying with them the one thing that could truly threaten an infection designed to eliminate negative emotions, the capacity for righteous anger. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the real message from the Serenity Collective wasn't a cry for help at all. Maybe it was a warning, wrapped in the language of salvation, broadcast by the last few moments of clarity a dying species could manage. The SOS was clear, help us. But the question that would haunt Zara all the way to Altair 7 was whether they were being asked to save the aliens from the happiness plague, or to save the galaxy from what the aliens had become.